What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review of a movie that just came out on VOD. It has been in the festivals, and it's a Norwegian film called The Innocents. We're going to go ahead and do our spoiler-free on that right now. Now, a lot of people are calling this one a little bit more of a thriller, and I definitely agree there, but there is some very darker tones in this movie. It does have a lot of drama. This is a movie that is entirely with kids for the most part. We have the parents of these kids as well. They are a smaller part of this movie, but this is surrounding about 4 or so kids who live in an apartment complex who are discovering their powers behind their parents' backs, and things get from really fun to really dark very fast. I read a little bit about why they made this movie and kind of what they were going for. The director, who is also the writer, Eskil Vogt, actually has done another film called Blind and said they wanted to make a movie about the kind of mystery of being a child and how we sort of live in this alternate universe when we're children that, we kind of forget as we get older. And this movie is kind of preying on that by adding super powered psychic sort of powers to some of the kids and what goes wrong with a child who may or may not be all there. It gets pretty dark. There was a scene in this movie that involves an animal that was it was a rough sit for me. I'll be honest. I had to look away at one part. Like, it was just too much. So if that stuff kind of bothers you, just know that going in. I just want to at least warn those who get triggered by that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm a huge animal fan, and usually I can kind of handle it, but it was a bit much. Just really mean-spirited. I mean, which kids, if you really think about it, and remembering back when we were kids and how we would sort of understand the world and what life and death was, kids do some pretty fucked up things, and in order to understand that and kind of get grips of reality of that. And unfortunately, this kind of puts a finer light on it, only things get a lot worse in this movie. This is extremely well shot. It is got a style about it where they do a lot of upside down shots to kind of show you almost like it's a different world, that these kids are coexisting in this apartment complexes that of a neighborhood. These are like, there's like 17 different apartment complexes, and all these kids sort of come together and meet. There is 2 main stars for the most part, involving a girl, a younger sister, and an older sister who has autism, who she is kind of working with her. And this kid, the younger kid, is sort of kind of dealing with what autism is. She doesn't really understand it all that well. She loves her sister, but she's also very inquisitive. And I think that what Eskil did here is pretty on the nose with kids and how they can be somewhat cruel in their endeavors to understand the world. Not so much necessarily that they are cruel individuals in themselves, but just as an inquisitive thing, sometimes they push the boundaries to see where the reality walls are, essentially. And some of these things that happen in this film are kind of mean-spirited, and you kind of wonder, like, what is going to go on with this? For kids to be acting in a movie like this and some of these scenes, it's like jarring. Like, there's some moments in it you're just like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I want to watch this. The kids did a really great job. I mean, honestly, like, you couldn't ask for better acting for kids. Like, it really was pretty phenomenal work. I don't know if the one of the lead actresses was autistic or not, but man, they seem to have done a really good job and transform in this movie into different personalities and things. The director added a lot of unique individual kids into the mix, and sort of how they all just sort of get along no matter what their creed or class or race or anything is. It's very like kids are, where the world teaches you to kind of be bad in a way. But this also kind of skews that and turns it on its head a little bit and makes it, what if there was nothing to stop certain kids from doing the things that they did, having these sort of special powers? Would they be able to reel it in if they didn't have some sort of parent or guardian that would help them to keep preventing from doing stuff like this? And which parents are there or not there? It kind of adds all of this together, but the parents are pretty much the backdrop of the movie. In fact, there's not a lot of face shots. of the parent. It is to be done to make a sort of child's view. And I think they do a really good job of that here. Really well thought out. As far as like horror, it's not exactly horrific, but I mean, just imagine having a kid that is kind of gone bad, doing bad things. That is kind of what you're going to get in this movie. And if you can kind of understand the gamut of that, then you will understand it. Now, this movie gets a little bit into the weirder as it goes on, and there's some pretty interesting lore that they've added in here to the psychic abilities that's kind of interesting and unique that I think is good. But the slow pacing of this movie, which is intentionally done so, is not going to be for everybody. It's extremely slow, and it was slower than I normally enjoy. But it definitely does add to some of that tension and the score that comes in to kind of play along with these kids. And it does so in a very natural way that you would see these kids reacting. It's not filled to the brim with dialogue, you know, like adults would speak. It's like a child. So you have to kind of understand it from that perspective. Ultimately, though, this is going to be a very niche film for a very niche audience. It is very well done and definitely, you know, could be someone's favorite movie, while it could be someone else's worst, most boring movie they've ever seen. There are things in this movie that are graphic in some regard, and that might keep some of the slower paced people who do not like slower pace in the game to watch this film to the end, but there is a 2-hour, you know, time limit on this film, and it is definitely pushing the boundaries on that. So this might be a tough watch for a lot of people. Ultimately, though, it's really hard to kind of score this one for me because it just doesn't feel like a movie for me, although it did keep my interest minimally throughout the film because not only is it well shot, but the kids are doing well and the story is interesting. However, spaced out the nuggets of information and story we get, it definitely creates a sort of atmosphere about it and kind of has this weird twisty thing at the end that kind of leaves it open and makes you wonder like what's going on, a bigger picture, so to speak. This isn't going to be one of those films that's going to answer a lot of questions. It's more about just getting in the mind of a child and kind of experiencing their world as an adult. So if that's something that might appeal to you, maybe this will be for you. Multiple kids have powers in this neighborhood, kind of makes you wonder what's going on. But I think really what it is the director is kind of just taking what we think about as children and how we want to have something very special about us in our world, and we bring it about by being children and just believing in things so much that it actually becomes. And what if that were to be able to be true? Well, here's the movie for you. I think that's kind of where they're going with this. There are some really endearing moments in the film. There's also some very childlike, inquisitive moments that could come across as mean-spirited or just callous. Kids aren't necessarily callous. They're just so inquisitive sometimes. You know, yeah, there are some bad eggs, I'm sure. But it's interesting nonetheless. I thought it was a fairly decent film and it was well shot. I would be like a 6.5. Maybe a 7. It is definitely in the production-wise, like a 8 or 9 category, but interest-wise, it comes down a few points for me because it's just not a film that wrapped me up entirely in the film. If you like slow and very steady, it takes its time. But let me know what you think. Have you seen the trailer? Did you know this movie existed? The Innocents is out now for $6.99 to rent. Might be a little high if you're kind of on the edge of, I don't know if I like slow stuff, just hold off. But if you're kind of into that, it's $6.99 to rent pretty much on any of your digital platforms. I had to go to Amazon.com on my desktop and actually rent the movie. It wouldn't let me do it through Prime for some reason. I don't know why. So just a heads up, if you're having troubles with it, that's what I did. I try to pick out movies that maybe you guys might not know about so I can kind of bring them forward and show you things that maybe that you didn't even consider. I watched the trailer on this and it just kind of surprised me and kind of made me interested because I think somewhere deep down in all of us as kids, we all wonder what it would be like to have powers. And I think that's why things like superhero movies and stuff like that really appeal to a larger demographic. And this is kind of a smaller sort of telling, a Norwegian telling, if you will, of that specific moment in a realistic approach. As realistic as psychic powers is to you, but you know. But thanks for coming by, guys. Appreciate all the support. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a subscribe button's right there. You can hit that button and I'll have more videos for you in the future, be they horror, thriller, anywhere in that bracket. That's pretty much where I like to live and watch. So if you like horror, definitely come back and we'll see you next time. But other than that, thanks for coming by. And as always, long live the void.